Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Kristin O'Rourke, and I'm a professor at Cape Breton University in Nova Scotia, Canada. And this is my colleague, Lynn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Lynn LeVatte, and I'm Assistant Professor of Education at Cape Breton University.
So we are joining you virtually today to talk about our federally funded project, Professionalism and Leadership Development in Ice Hockey, Understanding Social Emotional Learning Experiences of Coaches in Atlantic Canada. And the Atlantic region is that east coast part of the country that borders on the Atlantic Ocean. So this is our further research team. We are in partnership with Atlantic Hockey Group. We have Mr. Brandon Bourgeois, who's the technical director of this organization. And our research team, myself, Dr. Lynn LeVatte, we have Dr. Christina Phillips, who is a member of our group and joining us from the University of Toronto. We have Mr. Shaun Ranni, who is a doctoral student and manager of varsity athletics here at CBU. And we have our two research assistants who are both Bachelor of Education students who will be finishing up their programs this summer. So this partnership is between our university and the Atlantic Hockey Group. So CBU is a public co-ed undergraduate university located in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, which is an island as part of the province. This is the only university on the island and has both undergrad and graduate programs. So the Atlantic Hockey Group is based in Moncton, New Brunswick, which is the province next to Nova Scotia. But their programming spans the Atlantic provinces, so Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and New Brunswick. It's based in male and female hockey, power skating, goalie training, and is designed for higher level performance players. So the project purpose was really to merge, both research and practical application of social emotional skills in coaching. And here in Canada, we've seen an increase in issues related to coaching and the ability and understanding on how to deal with children and how they think, how they can grow, and in a way that coaching can foster them as people in addition to hockey players. So this project is a partnership and working together to bridge those social emotional learning gaps that coaches have in the sport of hockey. So the social emotional learning, we know in leadership and sport, is emerging and gaining attention, particularly in Canada. And we're seeing a lot of different perspectives in coaching that weren't there in the past. And the importance of understanding adolescent brains and how that different coaching styles affects them in terms of mental health, in terms of performance. So looking at really that holistic approach and how are coaches prepared to deal with children in addition to their coaching abilities and their skill development on the ice. So this was a qualitative research study, and we are kind of still in the beginnings of this project. These coaches, and we have had 8 so far, were recruited and participated in semi-structured interviews. So they were asked 5 questions pertaining to coaching, leadership, training, different social emotional learning pieces to see what levels of social emotional competencies that they had and how different pieces of their training lent themselves to those SEL pieces. So we had both in-person and virtual interviews as these coaches spanned across these 3 Atlantic provinces. And we employed a thematic analysis through coding, through the transcriptions to get emerging themes through our data. So hockey in Canada, I think, is internationally known as a very popular sport. And I believe too, a lot of the Scandinavian countries and across Europe, hockey is our national love. And so we know that globally there's a 1.8 million who are currently registered, and over a third of those are Canadian. So sport leadership has also been an increasingly larger area of research, and studies are showing that the old coaching methods from the past are not successful in developing young athletes. And so how can we address this, even in our own micro level in the Atlantic hockey region? And in employing these different skills, we promote diversity, inclusivity, increased mental strength, grit, and all these elements that we want to embed in youth today. And so then leads us to the question, but are coaches trained to meet the needs of these diverse players with all of these different, backpacks, figuratively, that they're bringing to the ice today? And we're seeing across the country that a lot of coaches are not prepared. We have a lot of parent volunteers, a lot of folks who used to play hockey, so have naturally gone into coaching and have received lots of training in skill development, on ice type skills, but are not receiving training on how to deal with, manage youth minds, and also promote those types of skills within their players as well.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to continue on with the presentation and talk a little bit first about social emotional learning. So this is an area that we were interested in with a lot of perspectives coming from background in education. And just a brief definition and talking about social emotional learning can be explained as methods in which youth and children tend to learn in ways that they recognize, manage their emotions, as well about positive relationships and how we build those relationships, how we care about others, and how we make good decisions and avoid some negative behaviors. So within that field, we're looking at self-awareness, self-regulation, identifying and recognizing emotions, being more aware of our own social abilities, and also respecting others. We also talk about decision-making, problem identification and situation analysis, self-management, self-regulation, and how we build and strengthen some of those social relationships and social engagement pieces. So a little bit about the project summary. We did have 8 interviews, and we are a continuing project, so we're in the first phase. Our participants were members of the Atlantic Hockey Group who were head coaches within the organization. The average time of our interviews were about 37 minutes and 9.5 years of coaching experience with an average age of about 29 years. So within our initial evidence so far, the emerging themes that we had were adolescent behavior and development, effective communication practices, as well as looking at online versus in-person training. So how is the training delivered to the coaches? And also what other resources are available in terms of community mentoring within the hockey organizations and hockey families. And also within our research article, we did look at some of the next steps. So we are in the process of continuing with the research study and adding additional interviews, looking at building and creating a leadership toolkit for training for coaches within the Atlantic Hockey Group. And within that, we're developing evidence-based supports. And we want to take this to various locations within Atlantic Canada, within Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, to support the training of Atlantic Hockey Group coaches. So as a summary of the results, as I mentioned, we had some emerging themes from our data so far. So the first theme we looked at was training requirements for coaching adolescent youth. So some of the feedback we received in the data looked at behavior of youth and understanding, as Kristin had mentioned, about the development of adolescents in general. So the themes that we looked at resulted primarily looking about training requirements and what training had been received and what training would be welcomed for future development for coaches. So 75% of the respondents noticed that they did not recall receiving training related to the topic, but would find it to be very beneficial. So another key finding was requests for specific training relating to diverse abilities or culture or diverse cultural backgrounds. So one example that we did have related to coaches recalling having players with ADHD or behavior challenges where they weren't sure how to address the individual player, and what they wanted to know how they could best support that player. Another area was looking at female hockey players and the relationship building with that, if they were a male coach, and wondering with different dressing rooms and having additional time to collaborate and meet the players, because they felt sometimes that they might have been missing out of the locker room materials and discussions because they were physically separated in different dressing rooms. So that was one area. The second theme related about communication and practices and processes. So what types of communication were best served for coaches, for players, and for parents or guardians. So all of the participants discussed this element as being extremely important and very critical for relationship building. Participants did describe the impact of coaching children and the importance of relationship building, and also the expectations. So the types of communication that were described would be emails to parents and guardians, in-person meetings with parents, players, and other coaching staff, as well as text groups that were very informal, but it was very critical for them to keep up to date with different processes, practices, things that wanted to be explained to the groups. Within the communication, the expectation was a very, very important piece that the coaches had mentioned. They wanted parents and guardians to understand what the role of the coach was in terms of the organization, and what the best practice would be for contacting the coach, what the best practice for the coach contacting the players, and how to address those pieces. So in a discussion summary, the study aligned, I guess, with, how could we improve communication? How could we improve a general coaching perspective for those who are working with youth and children in Atlantic Canada? And this may align with hockey analytics and coaches' ability to motivate players to become successful leaders, both on and off the ice. So a large underpinning of our study was looking at, effective leadership and practices around those pieces of social emotional learning. So building confidence through skill development, improved communication practices, and leadership may equate in a hockey team's ability to improve upon their drill scoring and game planning progression. So as our next steps, we move forward with this study, we are going to undertake additional interviews, build on that toolkit for development for our coaches, incorporating evidence-based supports from our research, but also research that has occurred in the past, and also the community presentation piece, where we're able to disseminate this project for local coaches and local organizers, not only within Atlantic Hockey Group, but also within our minor hockey associations within New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI. So that wraps up our presentation. We're very grateful to the team at the university for accepting our research project, and we look forward to any feedback or questions. My email is there, and we do have our full article available in the conference proceedings. Thank you.